996-3970. Now, let's ask the Undertaker.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Undertaker. It's an open, honest look at the funeral service brought to you by Golden Gate Funeral Home and Crematory. With facilities in Fort Worth, Texas, Dallas, Texas, and Tallulah, Louisiana. I'm your host, John Beckwith Jr., and I'm joined today by our Chief Financial Officer, my sister, Sister Carolyn Haynes.
Good morning, everybody.
And we have the pastor, A. Lewis Eaton.
Blessings on you.
We have our Chief Marketing Officer, Sister Marlonda Taylor.
Good morning.
All right, today come from Matthew. It's the 5th chapter and the 4th verse. Dr. Eaton, read that for us.
The word of God says, "Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted."
All right, we also have the Chief, Kevin Haynes, in the house. He's behind the camera today. Say hello, Chief.
Hello, everybody.
All right, today we're talking about the loss of a child and surviving it. Actually surviving the loss of a child. And Carolyn, I don't think of anything that will be more devastating than the loss of a child.
I can't, John, being a parent and a grandparent, I can't even imagine anything being worse than that. We, bring the children into the world as mothers, and then parents nurture them. I can't imagine that lost.
Pastor, it is called the ultimate tragedy, the violation of the rules of life.
Yes. Yes. And it gets to you because, especially if you've been in that situation. And when I lost my baby, she was 4 years old. That was one of the hardest things to deal with because I recognized, although life went on, I thought the major part of me was gone because a child that I brought into this world was not here with me.
So when we say devastating, Marlonda, we're talking about usual symptoms of grief. We know that's devastating by itself. But to add a child to that, and the stages of grief kind of change some.
Absolutely. We always talk about being in the stages of denial, shock. And so for me and my husband, I think we experienced most of those characteristics as we discuss that we talk about as undertakers, with our families, or things that we experience. So definitely for us, we were shocked and in disbelief.
So when we talk about, Carolyn, trying to get to a new norm, we understand how difficult that is because sociologists as well as psychologists, thank you, Jackie, for the great research, believe that the grief of bereaved parents is the most intense grief known.
There's no way you're even thinking about any kind of norm, let alone a new norm with this particular loss. Sure, gut-wrenching, knees knocking you to your knees has got to be this grief process in the loss of a child.
When you think of a loss of a child, Pastor, regardless of age, age doesn't matter.
No.
The loss of a child is one of the most difficult things we will ever deal with.
It is. And then when you have to go through the process of making arrangements and then going to that service for that child, that's difficult. And then when you let your personal things, you get angry because people have come to a funeral and bring children to a funeral. And there's your child laying up there. It looked like, to me, it got disrespectful to me.
Surviving the loss of a child, Marlonda, is still my baby, regardless of the age.
I would definitely agree. While in my case, or my husband and I, you're talking about a 16-week loss. Water broke at 16 weeks, but baby boy, very devastating. And as you go back in that question that you asked about, it's a devastating loss like no other. It was very different from when I lost my father. That was sad. But my goodness, to carry a seed for a period of time, regardless of how long it was,
Right.
I will never in life get over that experience.
Most parents from this research says this, Carolyn. There is no words in our language that's ever going to describe what they're feeling.
There's no way. I mean, the thoughts that would come to your mind, you can't even possibly express them. Any other language you may know, that would be the one that probably everybody would hear.
Yeah.
Because I experienced making arrangements with a mother just the other day, and it was her only child. This young man, however, was 39 years old, but she was not able to continue finalizing the arrangements because of the devastation of that loss.
Pastor, it's just unnatural.
Yeah.
It is not natural for you to outlive your child.
No, it's not. And that's the thing that really gets to you, because you recognize that this child is innocent, regardless of what the age, this still your baby. And you're going to stick closer to that child than you will to anything else.
Merlanda, all bereaved parents lose a part of themselves. Is that a true statement?
I would definitely say, for me and Keith, I would definitely say so. While it may look on the exterior that we have it all together, internally we are still torn up as parents.
Healing might seem completely impossible, Merlanda. Do you believe that sometimes you can be so devastated that you feel like healing is never going to come?
I would say so, because I mean, especially during that moment, for the first couple of months, the first couple of weeks, it's tremendously devastating. I feel like, for me, I felt like all hope was lost. I didn't think I would be healed, and then at some point, Mr. Beckwith, I didn't want to be healed. I was so numb, and I just felt like, I go to church, I'm a pretty decent wife, I'm a pretty decent daughter. Why in the world? And so I just felt like, I didn't even want my healing at that particular time. I didn't.
Pastor, feelings of injustice? You feel like, listen, this should have never even happened. This is just not right. It is an injustice for a child to pass, an innocent child to pass away.
Yeah, and you really feel that way, I felt like all these years I've been preaching and stuff, and then you take my baby. What did I do wrong for you to do that to me? And you really just got angry. And you didn't know who to take it out on, because really it was in his hands that it happened.
Now, we got two parents here
Yes.
that survived, because that's what the show is about, is surviving the loss. And you both survived. This got to be some of the hardest work you ever had to do, Marlanda. You actually survived it. You're here today.
Right. And, I think about sometimes, Ms. Haynes, when I was in my graduate program, how hard it was to get through that master's program. And, you can't compare, hard work in school compared to an actual human being. And that was very devastating. But I did survive, because I had to come to the realization that, I had so much life in me that I wanted to live, that I was determined that I was going to press my way. I was going to make it.
You survived. Now, this has got to be the most intense pain, is what every sociologist, psychologist, both parents on this panel is saying. There is no pain worse. You said, I buried a parent, but it wasn't compared to losing a child. This is the most intense thing in life, and you still survive, Pastor?
Yes, and really the only way, I just want to speak for myself, I survived with that. I had people to come around me to let me know, man, you got something to live for. You don't need to be sitting back saying everything is gone, there's nothing left. You have to stand up, because remember, you have another child in the other room.
Isn't that something, y'all? And that's interesting, because somebody's listening right now, Marlon, that has not lost a child. But we're saying to ourselves, if something happens to my child, I'm going to lose my mind. If something happens to my child, God's going to just take me with him. And we're saying that doesn't have to be the the case. You can survive the loss of a child.
Yeah, you definitely can. I remember when the services were happening at Golden Gate Funeral Home, I asked Mr. Beckwith, can y'all please bring the baby, because it was actually an empty casket that was there during the service, but the baby was actually back in the morgue. But I asked for them to bring the casket to me, and my husband and I sat on that front row with that casket, with that baby on the inside. And I told him, I said, you know what? I said, we did good. I said, we did good, because we made it this far. And so anybody that's listening, you have to hold on to hope. You have to get counseling. I know, as African Americans, we don't want to talk to nobody. We keep everything on the secret. But get counseling, get help, use your resources, because that is what's going to see you through your spiritual, leaders in your churches, or what have you, but use your resources because you need somebody to talk to. Men and women, they grieve differently, but you both can make it for the sake of your mind, your body, and your spirit.
There's no way, right way, Pastor, to feel. So you said if there's a parent listening that may had a child that passed away, what they went through, if they're still surviving, they must have done it right.
Yes.
For some of us that we pray never happens, but if it does, there's no right or wrong way to survive this.
No, you just have to put all your faith and trust in God that He will carry you through this, because you recognize that not only are you going through, but that other parent is going through. And it got to the point that sometimes we didn't even want to talk to each other because we felt like we were going to put the blame. This wouldn't have happened if you hadn't have done this. So best thing we do is just get professional help to help you through this.
It's too intense. Come on, help me out, Carolyn. Now, some might be in shock, some might be in denial. We know the stages of grief, but the intensity of the shock, the intensity of the denial.
Most definitely. We're talking about, like we've lost our mother, we've lost our brother, and that grief process was hard for us, as Miss Marlonda just stated to us about the loss of a child. That's got to be 100-fold in that pain that you feel in your heart, in your mind, when it's actually a child. Again, being a parent, being a grandparent, I can only imagine it being 100-fold.
And Mr. Beckwith, I'll say this. I thought I was going crazy because during the time of our loss, I actually had to go through labor and delivery on Easter. So Easter for my family, we think about what in the world, like all these memories, like, we think about Easter, the resurrection, the burial and the resurrection of Jesus. And so my husband, being the minister that he is, and my father-in-law came in the room, and my brother-in-law came in the room.
Pastor.
Father-in-law pastor, brother-in-law pastor, husband,
a preacher.
So they said, that, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. But this was the day that he saw fit to take this baby back when he got up. And it was like, this is the wrong time to be talking to me about. But the encouragement, and I was saying to him, because the doctor said, we're going to keep you, Miss Taylor, for another 2 days. He came back in about 6 hours. He said, you know what? I don't know what happened, but the spirit came in the room. I just felt healed. I was able to go home that afternoon. Easter.
Come on, Pastor. They say some people this is what they reported, that they felt betrayed by God.
And that's a true statement. The first thing came to my mind, Lord, I've been living and doing everything that you asked me to do. Now here it is. I'm going to have to sit on that front row. It wasn't no grown child. This is an infant.
Baby.
And you took her away from me. Why? And I know people say you're not supposed to question God, but that one day I went in the question and answering section. I said, I need to have some answers because I don't understand this. I said, now I'm not giving up what I'm doing because that's the calling you put on my life, but I need to know why I had to go through this.
And Carol, as we talk about that, we know in all grief that it's confusing, especially when it comes to religion. That if there's ever a time you're confused is when you're going through grief. It's just one of those things.
Exactly. We've learned and we've been taught that, He supplies all your needs. And in the case where, the children were here, Marlonda's not, here. But the fact that you gave me this baby, you gave me the beginning of this life, and now the baby's not here, you're mine. You talk about all the time that your mind going around in circles and your mind going in different directions. The confusion in that state has got to be enormous.
You just start questioning everything. It's like, wait a minute now. Did this even happen?
Right.
Well, I mean, I knew I was pregnant. I know something was living
inside
me. You want to stay in denial, and you want to stay in that for a long period of time.
Yeah, you do, because I mean, in my case, I said, when my water broke at home, I was like, I done had a little accident. But again, in denial, I knew what was going on, and I told my husband, I said, well, let me just wait, just a few, and then, as things began to change, I was like, okay, I already know what this is. But again, it doesn't matter how faithful of a servant you are in Christ, you know, we're all going to suffer one way or another, because that's what you sign up for. You know, when you know, accept him as your personal savior, you don't get to, you know, just live a perfect life. There are going to be some things that will happen to test your faith. And, you know, and now we have an almost 2-year-old. So to God be the glory, you know, that he brought us out. And again, that hope, that's the only thing that I can tell you, is that there is hope before or after.
Surviving the loss of a child, Pastor.
And you know, what really got me through all of this is that my daughter, who was the oldest, we put over in the corner as if she didn't exist because we had lost the baby. And her mother would go in the room and just stay in the room, wouldn't talk to no one. And one day I said, wait a minute, we forgetting we still have a baby. And she told us when she got a little older, she said, I was wondering, did y'all still love me because of what y'all went through?
No set timetable, Carol. Could be several months, could be a year, it could be 10 years, it could be 20 years. No set timetable. We got to get some professional help.
And it's not going to be one, because there are going to be triggers. We talk about triggers all the time. So even you think you made it through that first year, and then the birth date.
Yeah.
You know, that date is coming up. So that trigger will send you back into that grief process, spiraling you all the way back possibly to the very beginning. So there is no expiration date, and please don't try to set a date for yourself. There's enough that you'll have to do step by step with professionals. And I think one thing that will help social media now, with everything there, in case you don't want to go out for at least a while, it's available to you. There may be some family members and friends that will come to you to try to help you, try to comfort you, but being in the setting where there are other parents that have experienced the same situation, you're different because of your child, but you've experienced that and you're able to talk to each other, I think, a little bit better.
Common emotional reactions. There's some common things that we have. Let's help us out with this. Marlon, we said some of the common things. Most people, it is common to be in shock, is in denial. But there's another one here that Jackie wrote here was a replay. I thought that was interesting because that's not in the normal grief process. It says after the loss of a child, some may center on the what ifs.
Right.
The
So
what ifs.
yeah, so I remember that day to the T. I mean, again, that's a day that I'll never forget. And I remember that morning waking up, I wanted to bypass all of the activities, the Easter egg hunt and stuff that was going on at the church. So I said, well, you know what? I'll stay behind, I'll vacuum and stuff like that. And I remember Keith saying, now don't overdo it. So all I kept hearing in my head was, don't overdo it, don't overdo it. But then when that happened, when that water broke and I'm in the hospital getting ready to go through labor and delivery, all that I did that day, all that I'm thinking, what could I have done differently? Could I have stayed in the bed longer while it was an early pregnancy? But I'm just replaying in my head that whole day, that night. What did I eat? Soul Man's barbecue. I had a barbecue with chopped beef on it. What if I hadn't have eaten that? So just so many things. So I'll agree with Miss Jackie in that research, that replay. That replay.
The replay. The what if. And now what about the loss of hope, Pastor? We see your child was, 4 years old? All the things we dream about of our children. Going to school, first day of school.
Yeah.
We dream about graduation from high school, going on to college, teaching them about the birds and the bees, teaching them about Jesus.
Yes.
All the things that we said that we've been through, now we have learned and know better. Now we're going to give it to the child. All the hopes. I want my child to do better than I did. I want them to go further than I did. I want them to make more money than I did. I want them to be happier than I am. I want them to choose. All the hope. How do we survive that?
Yeah, it's difficult to, but you have to have a faith and a trust in God that you can make it. Because you be hoping that, look, I know this child, when they grow up, they going to do this, they going to do that. And then when you lose it, it really gets next to you. And you don't, you be sitting back saying, what did I do? How can I replace? And, and we had to come to an agreement together. We're not going to try to have another child because we can't replace this child by having another.
All that hope just went
out the window.
Went out the window. Now, there was another one here. I thought this was, thank you, Jackie. coping with parental grief. I said, wait a minute, Carol, I've never heard that one before. Coping with the resolution of parental grief may seem like an overwhelming task. She goes on to say, but it is possible. You'll never get over the loss of your child. This was deep. She said, but you can survive it.
Yes.
We know you can survive it because we have two survivors right here, Marlonda.
Yeah, absolutely. I just feel like I had a determining spirit. Then I like I was saying earlier this week, I had a village, around me. So my village wasn't going to let me give up.
Right.
But I feel like if I had not had hope, Kate and Jace Taylor would not be here today. If I was still mourning and still grieving and still talking about what happened in 2004 of April, he would not be here. So I had hope that God was going to see me through. And I told the Lord, I said, you know what? I made a vow that I would even serve you, even after all of this was over. I promised him that I was going to show him and I was going to show others. If he can do it for me, he can do it for y'all too. And so many people have come to me and said, I remember that video that you posted on Mother's Day in 2014. Now I have 2 children. Now I have 1 daughter. Now I have 1 son. All these rainbow babies that have now come to pass because they did not give up hope, Mr. Beckwith.
That's it.
The loss of a child.
That's it.
But the
That's
first
it.
word is surviving.
Survive.
So we have to survive. And we understand this is not uncommon what you go through. This is some parents are actually dealing with suicidal thoughts.
Come on now.
Yes.
Come on.
They say you got to know how deep this is actually going. They say I'd rather be with my child. And this is the only way I can be with my child again is that I need to go and join them. They can't come back to me, so maybe I need to go to them. Understand when we say survive in this current, we're saying we know this is a difficult situation. We got Charlotte on line 1. Charlotte Beckwith.
Hey, Miss Charlotte.
Miss Charlotte, I hope you're listening to the show. Can you hear us? You're up to what we're talking about today?
Yes, I can hear you all the way from Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
All right.
How are you doing?
Good. Go right ahead. What's your thought about this surviving the loss of a child?
Oh my God, I can imagine being in that position because, I just got that 1 child. And if I lost so much, I'll just lose my world. So I would probably think about those suicidal thoughts because I would want to be with him. Because I feel like he hadn't lived life and I had. And I would feel like that was taken away from me. So that's my thoughts about the surviving child.
So we think about the clinical. Go right ahead, Charlotte.
Well, no, you can go ahead because I had a phone call from one of my clients last night who said she listened to your show every Saturday. And she had a question she wanted to ask you, but she didn't want to call in. Her concern is that she has an 82-year-old mother who has insurance on all of her brothers and her siblings. Her brothers live out of town, and they have told her several times that they don't need that insurance. And so the client is the power of attorney over her mother's affairs. Her question to you, what can she do about that situation?
Well,
her name is Mrs. R.G.
All right, I just want to make sure that we're correct on the questioning so I can answer it correctly. There is someone who has insurance on someone. And those people are saying to her, if something happens to me, I don't need your insurance to handle my final disposition. But remember, insurance is not just for handling final dispositions. Insurance is an inheritance. So not only does she need to keep that insurance, when something happens to them, she would actually get an inheritance from them. They may say, we don't need the money for a final disposition, but this is my way of giving you something even when I pass away. And as African Americans, especially this month, as we learn from our history, is that we need to start leaving inheritance. And when we pass away, that our families should be better off financially than they were while I was yet alive. Right. And having that insurance policy is going to put her in a position. And thank God they don't need her money for final disposition. It'll just help her bank account get even larger. And they can actually give her a present, even in the lack of their presence. So I would say to her, keep that insurance policy. If something happens to them, inherit your inheritance. And I hope that helped, Miss, is it RG?
Yeah, everybody tell her hello because she's very excited.
All right, thank you, RG, for being a part of the show. Charlotte, you be careful out there traveling. Come back to us safely.
Okay, see y'all.
All right, God bless you.
Okay.
Charlotte mentioned suicidal thoughts. Y'all understand the clinical depression. This includes the sadness, the hopelessness, the worthlessness, the loss of interest in just daily activities. That leads to those devilish thoughts of suicide. And we understand when you're dealing with something that deep, when you're dealing with clinical depression, you got to get some professional help.
Yeah, you have to get professional help quick, fast, and in a hurry. I know in my case, I thought for a brief period of time, you know what, my life is over. Like I really didn't have any desire to keep going because, as you stated, Mr. Beckwith, you know, it's the parents that, you know, the children bury their parents. The parents don't bury their children.
Right.
So I'm like, hey, I work for a funeral home. This is easy for me. I can go in there and, you know, during my night shift from 6 to 10, I found the casket that I wanted. I found several things that I wanted. And then I came to the realization that this isn't the way. This isn't the way out, you know. This isn't how you should be thinking. And so immediately, you know, getting counseling through my job, they offered me resources to be able to speak to someone free of charge. I mean, that's what we have insurance for. So I was able to speak to somebody to get those thoughts on paper, to get those thoughts out loud, for somebody to be able to be on the other end and tell me how to reciprocate what I was feeling in a positive way and not a negative way.
Isn't that something? You got to take care of yourself, as they would say on the airplane. Put the mask on
yourself
first. But thank you, Jackie, for taking this to an even higher level. Y'all ready for
yeah.
this? This is what she said. Study shows this, that the loss of a child can affect your marriage.
Yes.
Not only do I have to put the mask on me, Carolyn, I don't want my marriage. The loss of a child will not necessarily strengthen your marriage. In fact, it can cause, Marlonda, some division.
I'm a witness, and
Yes.
you know, my husband and I will tell you we are very transparent people. Me more so than he, but I will definitely tell you it put a strain on our relationship. I had one foot out of the door. I was about gone because I expected him to grieve the same way that I was grieving. We didn't, you know, he was grieving in his own way, but I was mad as all get out. And, you know, it was like he was there, but he wasn't there.
Yeah.
And it put a strain on our relationship. I would come home mad, going in different rooms. I slept in a different room for a little while because I was like, man, this is not for me. Even though, you know, we know, oh, divorce is not an option. Oh, it was going to be an option because this baby was gone. So I needed somebody to blame. But we thank God I thank God for counseling and that we got help together and then separately.
We thank God for Marlonda and her transparency.
Yes.
We understand, Pastor, I'm going to let you get in here. I'm not sure if you stay with, but anyway, let's say this is that anger is a normal stage of grief. Now we're having a couple that are going through the exact same thing together. But you got two different types of people. We have the male and the female. We have the female that is naturally emotional, and then we have the male that is naturally protective. So if he is weak as you are, he can't be protective of you. He can't show the weakness because who's going to hold you up?
Right.
If he's so it's not always the male's fault when they don't show, because they're doing what they naturally should do, which is protect. Pastor, help me out. Will it put a strain on a relationship?
Yes, because you could say things that, you know, the biggest lie to me that I've been told by sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt.
So that's a lie?
That's a lie. Words do hurt because you could say something that you really didn't mean to say. Because I remember one day I came in and I said, you need to get up, you need to start doing. It was my child. And all this darkness came out of me, you know, and I said, wait a minute. If it wasn't for me, the child wouldn't been here. And then things just started accumulating. We just started saying
Wasn't no
things.
sticks, wasn't no stones. It was a whole bunch of
It's
hurt.
just a whole bunch of words. And those words hurt in the end because you be sitting around saying, I knew I shouldn't have said this, but... And I don't care how many boxes of candy, how many roses you get, you can't take that back, and that hurts.
I definitely agree, Pastor Eton. Bless your heart. And I would have to say, as Mr. Beckwith stated, you know, the women, we are emotional creatures. But when I think back to what he just said about being a protector, when I was having anxiety attacks late at night, because that's when I would basically bond with the baby, was at night. The person there that caught me, that held me, and wouldn't let me go till I stopped crying or went back to sleep, it was my husband.
Right,
You
so
know,
you
it
both
was
can't
him.
be having anxiety
That's
attack
exactly
at the
right.
same time.
Exactly right.
Who's gonna hold who?
Right.
Bottom line, two people don't grieve alike. You just don't. You just can't grieve alike. And I'm kind of glad that Jack and I are opposite of each other. I don't want to marry me. I need somebody that's kind of, they say opposites attract.
Right.
Like you
True.
need somebody that's going to look at it a little
Different.
different than the way you do. But the unfortunate thing is that it can still cause division.
Yes, and you be sitting up saying, okay, I've sold this. And you grab your little 2 rags and start at the door, and you recognize, hey, this wasn't, you said for better, for worse. And you got to hold on to that. You got to really let people know that you are under the care of the one who's able to give to keep you from falling.
Yeah, we're talking about surviving now.
Yes, sir.
Surviving the loss of a child and surviving
Yes,
my
sir.
marriage
Right.
where Londa and her husband are still together.
Yes,
And
thank you, Lord.
Beautiful baby. I don't want anybody to take that wrong.
Right.
And then the study shows this is that actually about 50% of everybody that get married get a divorce anyway.
Right.
Had nothing to do with the loss of the child.
Child,
They said
right.
actually those who have lost a child, that number goes down to 12%. So actually it's bringing more people to
Yes.
closer. And then actually it has brought people closer.
Closer.
You would have
Yeah.
thought it would have brought more people
Yeah.
divorces, but actually the ones who has lost a child together are more likely to stay together. Thank you, Jackie, for that research. Don't want to take that in the wrong direction. And I mean, this is such a great show.
Yes.
I mean, I don't. It's like we never. Ours never.
Long
never
enough.
enough. But this time we're going to pray for the families who have entrusted their loved ones to Golden Gate Funeral Home, and recognize those who have passed on to their reward. Miss Hanks.
Miss Verma Johnson, Mr. Billy Simpson, Mr. Derek Cox, Miss Franchelle Allen, Miss Bianca Grace, Mr. Umberto Villarreal, Miss Annie Hines, Mr. Larry Wentz, Mr. John Delcourt, Miss Myra Jones, Mr. Eon Finley, Mr. Esteen Freeman, Miss Barbara Lewis, Mr. Jimmy Liscombe, Miss Jean Chisholm, Infant Faith Williams, Miss Dorothy Tucker, Miss Marjorie Brown Jackson, Miss Tessie Flanagan, Mr. Derek Salter, Mr. Willie Boston, Miss Janice Calloway, Miss Classy Woods, Mr. James Wesley, Mr. Willie Hendricks, Miss Eddie Washington, Miss Betty Jordan Smith, Miss Diane McCullough, Miss Viola Kincaid, Miss Eola Bingham, Mr. Glenn Massey, Miss Vera Lewis, Miss Mary Hayes, Miss Vanessa Edwards, Miss Jasmine Peck, Miss Drejasa Peck, Miss Wabita Hill, Mr. Roderick Coulter, Infant Willie Davis III, Miss Rosie Washington, Miss Parlee Salters, Mr. Charles Franklin, Mr. Alex Hemphill, Mr. Johnny Williams, Mr. Roy Henson, Mr. Carrie Smith, Miss Russer Evans, Miss Lola Pierce, Miss Mary Collins, Mr. Sylvester Lyles, Mr. Will Ballard, Mr. Jack Jackson, Miss Velma Henderson, Miss Francine Rigsby, Miss Princess Nolan, Mr. Ernest Brown, Miss Sally Johnson, Miss Joanne Andrews, Mr. James Ellis Jr., Miss Gloria Scott, Mr. George Pearson, Mr. Andre Davis, Miss Maria Reyes, Mr. Percy Tate, Miss Pauline Brown, Miss Eula Tucker, Mr. Timothy Alexander, Mr. Marrero Ramirez, Miss Ruthie Delvar, Miss Janica Kennard, Mr. Kevin Carter, Mr. Sean Handy, Miss Jerlene Thomas, Mr. Jimmy Washington, Miss Robin Searle, Mr. Abraham Mayan, Mr. Thomas Hanford, Miss Yolanda Davis, Mr. Derek Cox, Miss May Johnson, Mr. Bobby Spencer, and Mr. John Walsh. Reverend?
Our Father and our God, we come now asking your choice blessings upon these families whose loved ones have transitioned to the other side. Father, we ask now that we be able to comfort them and keep letting them know that earth has no sorrows that heaven cannot heal. Keep letting them know if they continue to stretch their hands to Him, He will continue to be there for them. Then, Lord, we want to thank you for our founder and owner. Continue to let his home be a home of peace and one of prayer. Thank you for the legacy he has passed down to his children, that they continue to lead the Golden Gate Funeral Home family to higher heights and deeper depths. And then, Master, when it's yours to call and ours to answer, let us be somewhere listening for our name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Matthew 5th chapter, 4th verse. Dr. Eaton.
The word of God said, blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted.
Surviving. Surviving the loss of a child. We spoke about marriage, and thank you, Marlonda, for your honesty and your openness, and hopefully will help others. And then also, this great research, thank you, Jackie, says also you're dealing not only with a marriage in this, and not just dealing with your own personal feelings, but also surviving children are yet there. Yeah. Pastor Eaton, I heard you earlier, spoke about that you had another child there, and later there was questioning, how did y'all feel about me at that time? We know as parents you're grieving, but also siblings are grieving in the same home. And normally it's the parent that's making it okay for the child. But parents are going through. So you're not even there to make it okay for your own children.
Yeah, one thing we get to the point where, you're not old enough to know what's going on. Ooh, that's a hard statement to tell a child, because we don't know what the feelings of that child is. We just going on what we felt and what has been told to us for years, that we too young to even question anything. But those children have feelings and they hurt too.
One of the most difficult roles, thank you, Jackie, for a mother and father at the loss of a child is to continue being a parent.
Yes.
To the surviving.
Yes.
The bottom line, Marlonda, we still have to function in our role.
Yeah, we do have to function, and now with this almost 2-year-old, we still have to, be parents. I mean, this is what we asked for, this is what we prayed for, so now that we have it, we still have to go on as parents, and we honor baby Taylor. We still have his urn and his picture, and even when my son was born and took infant pictures when he was about 8 days old, my husband, who plays lead bass guitar, we put the urn on the guitar with the baby, with Caden laying next to the baby, because one thing that we cannot do is not tell him about who this child was. Right. So we still want to honor him, and we still want him to know you really are. You have a sibling, and you're actually the baby.
You're not the only child.
You're not the only child. So we want to continue that as good parents, is to not let that child go without being honored.
Difficult task, Carolyn. You got the switch task, as we was talking. From being comfort to being the comforter. Isn't that something?
Most definitely. You do have to think about the other child. And where you were saying the children didn't understand, your child was 4 years old, so your daughter definitely understood. She played with the child. With my children, I know, and we as parents, we tend to have them help with the baby. Go and get this for the baby. Go get this for your sibling, your sister and brother. There are times that child even became the mother and the father when other things was going on. So we do have to understand, we do. And as a parent, I can't even imagine having to switch that to go and talk to the other child, number one, to let them know what's going on, but then to be there to comfort them as well. And then you have to have your own alone time in order to grieve for you.
And we speak quite often about getting help.
Yeah.
Go get professional help for
Definitely.
you. Well, listen, you need to have family,
Yes.
couples
Yes.
therapy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The children need to go get help as well. The spouse needs to be with you. Family therapy.
Yes.
What good would it do for you to get a psychologist and you still living with someone else that's not going to see a
Right,
psychologist?
right.
Everybody
Yeah.
needs some help, Orlando.
Yeah, everybody needs help because again, we channel emotions differently. We have different emotions, and so there were some things that came up in therapy that I had known. I was like, "Oh, I didn't know you was feeling like that." Well, I
And
didn't know
had you
was
been there
feeling
by
like-"
yourself,
Right.
Okay.
I wouldn't have had that support. So just being able to, you know, be transparent, having a mediator, you know, like, you know, you get to raise your voice a little bit in them counseling sessions, because when you raise your voice at home, it's different kind of
Somebody
environment,
else.
right? So
and
I think
children
everybody
definitely can't
needed-
raise their voice. That's
Absolutely.
disrespectful.
Very
for you to tell us how
disrespectful.
you
Yes,
feel.
sir.
Yeah.
And must be one thing I had to learn through this is that I don't care how spiritual you are. Sometimes you gotta go lay on the couch.
Right.
You know, we saying I can stay on my knees, I can pray my
So
way
you
through
saying
this.
God made psychologists too?
Yes.
And God made psychiatrists too?
Yes, and He put them
counselors and-
to help us because you know, man, I know how to pray, but then what are you praying for? You know,
Because God, the answer came through the psychologist, but you
Came-
wouldn't go see him.
that one goes.
God put a social worker in your life, you wouldn't answer the door.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I got it. I just want to make sure that everybody else
Yes, sir.
get it too. And then we can't even begin. I know this is a deep show. We just need to stay right here for a minute. But you can't have an Ask Undertaker show without helping. And this is what we tell the public. This is what we tell everybody every week. Do not pass away. Not pass away. Without telling your family. Yeah, it's okay, y'all. We live on Facebook. We're doing a little
Right.
but you have to tell your family exactly what you want to do. You said, well, tell me. But I'm here to tell you this. 9 out of 10 things you tell me, I'm going to forget.
Right.
Let me tell you again, conversation don't get it done. Especially when I am grieving. Harold, you got to put it in writing.
You must put it in writing. We call that a pre-need. And all you're doing is preparing your funeral service. As funeral professionals, we see families every day that walk in. They cannot make a decision. They are out of their mind starting that grief process. We're asking you to help them by putting things in order. They know exactly what you want and what you don't want. We talk about every week, the most common thing is colors, styles, what they would like. Tell your family what you would like in writing in that pre-need.
In writing. I'm not going to remember.
No,
I'm going
sir.
to sit down. Let me tell you this. This is very important. Okay. And I got it. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no one where I'm ever going to forget. But you are going to forget.
Yes,
That's
yes.
impossible. It must be in. And you don't have to pay for anything. A lot of people say, I'm not doing pre-need because I don't have any money. I'm not doing pre-need because I'm not, I can't afford it right now. No, you can't afford it not
Not
to.
to.
It is free. Put it in.
Right.
Now you got a pre-need, right?
Yes.
You heard Miss RG called in. She talked with Charlotte, and she said, thank you for telling me to keep that insurance policy. And yeah, you're right. Keep it because that's
Yes.
an inheritance. But listen, still 8 out of 10 people don't have either no insurance, pastor, or not enough insurance.
Yes, and then a lot of times we get to that point where we think we can't have insurance because of health condition. But if you call Golden Gate, they have a policy that will help you.
Guaranteed issue.
Guaranteed issue insurance. And the reason I know is because I have it.
So health issues is not an excuse not to have.
No.
And I love this part, Carol. Budget issues is not a. Just tell us what the budget is, and then let us get the insurance for you.
Let us work
And then-
something in there for you, family.
And you got all these inheritance, right? You got the money, right? You got this. And then I'm leaving you a few things. I'm gonna leave a car. I'm gonna leave a house. I'm gonna leave a few things behind. And if nothing else, I'm gonna leave my daddy behind. I'm gonna leave my children behind. And all that needs to be in my last will and testament.
Yes, and so your last will and testament is very important, and as I always try to go back and reference, if everybody remembers the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin did not leave
No
a last will and testament, and how her family ended up having to be in probate court, but this last will and testament will even help cut out a lot of chaos and confusion. But again, it's protecting your family, your children, the parents that you may be taking care of, but just having things in writing. And this document is legal and it is read after your service.
And it's interesting, Carol, because a lot of people think I don't need it because I don't have anything. And that's the biggest mistake we can make. It's not just about property. It's not just about money. It's not just about things I own. Sometimes it's just instructions on taking care of my family.
Most definitely. I have some things and people that I take care of that are in place right now. As John likes to say, we're kind of in the sandwich generation. We have our children and we have our parents. A lot of you are out there in the same situation. You must have someone to take over that duty for you. You want to make sure they're taken care of. That's the only way that you can. And you put this information in your last will and testament. And you have something out there. No, I don't think there's anybody out there other than the rich folks that have paid for everything.
Right.
So understand, some creditors are going to come after something. Put it in writing so that your family and what you have is protected.
You know, it's interesting, you have young children, they get adopted. They go live with somebody else. I'm concerned about my adult children that still need some help. I got some kids that's not going to get adopted. I got to tell y'all what to do with them. Now, they of legal age, but they still need some help.
Right.
You hear what I'm saying? No other reason. Have a last will and testament for that purpose. So what if something happens to me and I can't speak for myself, Marlon?
That's a medical directive. And so if you choose not to be on life-sustaining medicine, you need to make sure that you have that medical directive. 9 times out of 10, if you're going into the hospital to the doctor and you're having any type of procedure, they're going to make you sign something saying, do you want to be on life support? We know that.
And you saying if I go to the hospital and I'm still conscious.
And you're still conscious.
Then they don't give me the sign. Or if
Correct.
I'm still in my right mind, then they don't ask me.
Right.
What happens if I get there
And you can't speak for yourself before. You need to have that in place even beforehand, because I know a lot of people don't want to be on life support. So make sure you get that taken care of as soon as
Anybody
possible.
ever heard this emergency contact?
Yes.
I don't know about you. I do not want to be an emergency
No.
contact. Emergency contact means I got to want to make a
Make the
decision.
decision.
Make your own decision.
Yes.
You got me down for emergency contact.
Yeah.
Emergency contact for what? You want them to pull that plug, you tell them.
I know that's right.
Call emergency contact. You don't put that pressure on me. Come on now. Every time we go into trial, they always say, fill out the emergency contact. Who wants that on them?
Right.
Do it.
You don't want that.
Yeah, do it.
When I went in the hospital just a couple of weeks ago, first thing they asked me, do this medical directive still stands? I said, yes. Whatever's on there, it remains the
And
same.
I hope if anything happens to you, you go back to that hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's another one. They might not have the
They
records
might
that
not
they
have that.
have.
Right.
Now, what about that money in the bank, Carol? Tell me about that payable on check.
Every account you have out there, please put a
Thank you,
second
Ashley.
person or a third person on that account. We still see way too often in funeral arrangements, they didn't get the pre-need, they didn't have insurance, but they have plenty of money in the bank, but their name is the only one on the account. Your family will have to go through legal process to get that money. You don't want that to happen. You don't want to lose some of your money trying to get it out
The bottom
legally.
line is that people just didn't know.
They did.
Right.
I know people want people to get their money.
Right.
Right.
Nobody want to just leave some money there. So we just saying, listen, I know you listen to that something. Go tell your friends.
Mhm.
Go tell your relatives. Listen, it's a thing called payable on debt. It's
Mhm.
free. Just go to the bank and put it on. I don't think one person alive want to leave their money in the bank. If something happened to me, give it to somebody.
Yeah.
So just go decide who the somebody is going to be. And then tell me I'm on there.
Yeah.
Tell me, please, pretty please, with sugar
Tell
on
me
it.
I'm
Tell me I'm on it so I can go get my money. And why do I need to write disposition to Mr. Lawless, Marlon?
Because the right of disposition is going to put someone in charge that's going to carry out your wishes. So, if, so many people say, well, I might be against cremation. But if you want to be cremated, you need to put somebody on that right of disposition that's going to make sure that your wishes are carried out. As things change, you need to update your documentation so that right of disposition can be downloaded on goldengatefuneralhome.com. It will stand. So if you don't want to be cremated, you better get that right of disposition in place and make sure that you tell somebody exactly what you want. And 9 times out of 10, that person will likely be your beneficiary.
Next of kin, Carol. That's automatic right of disposition.
Yep.
If you don't have one. If you don't have one of your next, you don't even know who your next of kin is.
Yes, right.
Because if you're not married, it could be more than
One
person.
person.
If you have two parents, they're equal.
Yes.
If you have more than
One
one
child.
adult child, they are all
Equal.
equal. There's too many opinions in the room.
Yes.
You must have a right of disposition. The
Yes.
possibility of you and your spouse passing away in the same car accident is very high. The possibility of something happening to you and your spouse together is high. It can happen. Bottom line, you're always
Together.
together. You need a right of disposition. And insurance is what they taught us, you guys. It's called a contingent. So I'm doing right disposition. I put my spouse in. So Jackie, you have my right disposition. You can do anything you want with me. But Jackie and I fly all over the world together, so I need to put somebody else on there as well.
Yeah, Kevin
So
Hayes.
now something happens to both of us. Next person steps in. Don't let the next of kin fall in line. Okay,
Right.
something happened to her, so now who's the next of kin? And now who's it?
Right.
Come on, y'all. We don't need to go there. Just fill out a right of
Disposition.
and I want two people name on there. One person and then a
Contingent.
contingent that you don't travel with.
Right.
I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Beckwith. Well, let me tell you what the insurance company told me and Carolyn. You both can go to France, but you both can't go on the same plane.
Thing.
Right.
Right.
And y'all both can go anywhere you want to, but we ain't gonna pay both of y'all.
Right.
We ain't gonna pay her family and
And
your
your
family. We
Right.
ain't got that much money.
Right.
You hear what I'm saying? Even they have enough sense to say, no, things can happen. If they think that much of them, I don't think that much of myself.
Self.
And your
And have a
Hmm.
beneficiary and a
contingent.
contingent beneficiary on all insurance and on my right of disposition, a right of disposition and a contingent that I don't travel with, that I'm normally not. You talking about chaos and
Confusion.
woo, we call the medical examiner and say, hey, we come to pick up the body. They say, who signed? We say
Yes.
this person. They said, well, we got another one.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that person come from? Oh, this is gonna trip you out, y'all. She was with him when he died, and she told us she was the common law wife.
Mm-hmm.
Did y'all know we did with that?
Yes.
Not she showed us an ID. Not she showed us a
Marriage license.
she
Just
just
word.
said it.
Yes. Just word.
And y'all, we have to fight that.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy? We can't even go get the body. Just because somebody else was with them.
Yes.
Yes.
And we have to fight to the end on that. Y'all, when I say everybody need to run the disposition,
Yes.
you got to have that stuff in.
Right.
Writing. Everybody needs that. That could have just been somebody off the street talking to the investigator.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Hey, I said, did y'all even get ID? I mean, it's crazy how the law works, y'all. It's not worth the argument. And then we got this thing called a letter of last instructions. Help me out. We're along with this letter of last instructions.
Letter of last instructions always like to say these are your chores. So you're leaving everybody instructions as to what to do. Make sure that you place this somewhere where it can easily be found and nobody has to tear your house up. But if, we all know Mr. Beckwith has no idea where Miss Jackie puts his clothes in the cleaner. So somebody may need to know, she might want to leave those instructions as to where to pick your clothes up from the cleaners. So just those things. Where is the prescription for my son who needs prescription, the lunch money, things like that. So make sure that you leave your last letter of instructions. Make sure it's detailed and make sure that it can be found by someone so that your house is not tore up.
You can't wait till I get sick.
Mm-mm.
When I get sick is when I'm gonna start doing these 7 things that don't take time.
Mm-mm.
Right now, I'm
Right.
healthy, I'm young, I'm great. So those 7 things have nothing to do with me. I'm sure I ain't doing no letter of last instructions, right? Because I don't plan on dying no time
Time
soon.
soon.
Accidents.
Carol, what I need this? Listen, there's enough poison in your system right now to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to die from a plane crash. Or,
Mm-mm.
no, nothing like you could just die. Like it's enough going on inside your body right now. You
Right.
feel absolutely nothing that would kill you. How do you know that, Undertaker? Because I bury them every day.
Mm-hmm.
They family come in there and say, wasn't
Ain't worth
nothing
nothing.
wrong with them. Nothing?
I need to know.
I don't know why he had a heart attack. He wasn't even on blood pressure medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, he was just, she was just, y'all, we hear that every day. When we say get these 7 things together, Carol, we talking about right now.
Right now, or you can write them down. Your family can understand them. Get them emailed to that person that's going to take care of it. But please understand, we don't know the day nor the hour. Again, you could be fine sitting there writing out that letter of instruction, and your name is called.
I'm
It's
just telling
done.
you, we hear all kind of stuff. And y'all think that's like every time somebody died, there's a reason why they died. Y'all know how many death certificates I see that say pending?
Pending.
They really don't know why you died.
Yes, sir. Didn't
They
know
do
you died.
toxicology, they do autopsies, they do all. And the bottom line, it says pending. Y'all check this out. I've seen them after all that come back, Carol, and say undetermined.
Unspecified.
Yes,
They
sir.
just
causes.
don't know
Know
why
why.
you died.
Yeah.
You get bit by a snake, you didn't get shot in the head, didn't have high blood pressure, wasn't no cholesterol, wasn't no diabetes. They just died. I said, they must don't believe in the Bible. Because the Bible talks about this appointed time. And it doesn't talk about a cause of death.
You sure do.
Everybody doesn't have to have a cause of death, but what you are going to do is die.
Yes, sir.
Get those 7 things. You don't have to be sick to do it. Let's thank Jackie, y'all, for the great job she does.
Great show. Great
I
show.
don't know how she do it every week. That's just amazing.
Right.
So today we're talking about surviving of the loss of a child. And thank you, Jackie, for that. I know that has helped. I know it's helped me. It's helped me even being on the outside looking in, that I have 2 survivors on my panel. So I don't have to look back and say, if something happened to one of my children, I have to lose my mind. I have to kill myself. I don't even have to say things like that. Because I know Marlonda has shared with me that I'm going to be okay. Pastor Eaton has shared with me that I'm going to be okay. They say even though losing a child is like no other, that I can survive. So thank you all for being open on that, and thank you for controlling your emotions. You're not crying on the panel. You're not falling out. Y'all was able to articulate. Y'all was able to openly. I think if you get home, Keith might give you a whooping by telling too much. But thank you all for actually doing that. And then I want to say hello to the people in Monroe. Tomorrow I'm going to be at Triumph Missionary Baptist Church in Monroe,
All right.
Louisiana. So looking forward to having an opportunity to hang out with them. So every week we're going to be right here live on Facebook. Y'all, let's thank Kevin Haynes.
Facebook.
Good job.
Great job. I'm looking at it on
Yes,
television. Boy, you know, my best one yet. We got all kind of different angles. And he did a great job today. And then tonight we're going to be on channel 26.3 at 7 o'clock, right?
Yes,
And
sir.
every Saturday morning we're here, Lord, live in this studio from 10 to 11 o'clock a.m. I love Facebook, y'all.
Yeah.
I love the live on Facebook. I love being able to ask the questions. You can actually type in and we answer any of them for you. So let's say, may God bless you and may God keep you is our prayer.
Like 3 minutes left.
Good. Well, you sit down.